This video is information security, and the bulleted text being displayed is what is being covered in this video, and again we hope you enjoy it. So the first part is privacy issues, which covers passwords and pins, which I'm sure, and I'm not patronising yourself listening to this video, that you have previously, I'm sure, had a situation where you've had to access something, use a pin or a password to get through to your own account. So that could be a bank account, it could be anything with your personal and sensitive information. But in your test, you may be asked what is a strong password and what it should consist of, and it always, within it being adequate length and at least 8 characters, which is a combination of, could be capital letters, it could be special characters, an exclamation mark, could be a pound sign or the dollar sign or even a euro sign for that matter, so that it's a strong enough one as well. But another thing you may be asking your test is what the mannerisms and how you would keep and store your passwords. So the first thing you'd obviously not do is write them down, and even this day and age I still have always come across people that says, oh, I'm just going to write it down and that sort of thing. It's still, I'm quite very firm in this subject and stating just do not write it down. If you forget it, then you obviously have to go through the steps by the security procedure to get it through. So you may get that in your test, highly likely to. And you should know, obviously, the privacy policy of whoever the organisation that you're dealing with. So that could be the bank organisation, it could be the university, or your employment, for example, and that you follow the privacy policy in order to get through and what you have available to you as well. So something that will come up particularly in your practice test and highly likely in your main test is the understanding of how you access certain areas of a system or network, for example. And one of the questions it may ask you is, what is the first thing that is required? And the first thing is, most importantly, is the user ID, which will identify who you are, the individual that you are, to the system that you're trying to log into. The password will also verify, so it also ask it to actually confirm the identity of the actual individual's user. So once these two measures have been met by the system, you'll get your access rights, but it obviously depends on what the user account's access rights have been given to the permission of the folders or the information that you can access in the system. So obviously with this point, it's allowing only appropriate personnel to have access to certain parts of the system, and particularly the sensitive parts of the system. So for instance, in the real life scenario, in terms of the if you're in employment, if you needed to, outside your remit, get access control to another area, you'd have to go to the right departments. That could be the IT support, or it could be one of those, it could be obviously dependent on what it is really. So just to understand, that's those 2 points there. But the next slide, very important, because this is the 3 processes that are activated when the user yourself will log into either a computer system or an area that you need to get into. And it's very important to remember these 3, because they will highly likely come in your test, and it'll ask you to select what the actual correct stages are at their place. So the first stage is authentication, which what you'll do is you'll find out if someone is who they are by saying their username, login, and then their password. Once that's been entered and you've confirmed it, the information will go over to the system. So you provide the username and password, and then the system will check that it matches the details that they have held specifically for you and the permissions that account has to, so the identification. And then finally it confirms it with the authorization to check that everything is okay, and it has granted the authentication, identified the issue, and allows you to move on and gain access to that area that you've been allocated to. So very important, particularly prepping for your test. Remember, it's authentication, identification, and authorization. Another question you may see is changing a password. So I'm at fault for years and years ago. I used to have access to accounts, etc., and I used to always, always leave my passwords. So even now, I'm always telling individuals, yourself, if you see me, always regularly change your password on any accounts, because it is that if the your password stays the same, it's easier for an individual to log in, especially hackers, to memorize your certain key wordings, your interests, etc., and they'll be able to get it a bit more easier. On a Windows computer, you may be asked in the test, so how do you actually change your Windows password? So it is on the keyboard commands, it's Control, Alt and Delete. Or if you needed to do it through the control panel, you can search and just go to the control panel by searching just down there as well. Just remember that may come up in your test. So the sensitive data, yourself, any organization should all be kept secure because it can be used for malicious purposes, and that is what we call identity theft. So that identity theft is the act of impersonating someone, often using stolen credentials to commit some criminal act. So they may obtain your credit card or bank details, even a fake passport, could be a driving license, to obviously use that for malicious purpose for their own reward. So keeping your data secure and ensuring that you're doing all the steps to make sure that no one's got access to it, very imperative. Some of these wordings, particularly identity theft, may come up in your test, so try and familiarize yourself quite well with some of these wordings. And they do come up in the practice test as well that you'll have a go at after this, so it is good to go through that too. Additionally to identity theft, there are threats from viruses and Trojans, so criminals will attempt to gain access through different particularities. But one of them is a technique called phishing, which we did briefly talk about in the first section. So what phishing generally is, it's an individual that's trying to pretend to be from a trusted body, such as a bank, or it could be another area, and they're trying to gain sensitive data, such as a PIN code. What you might find is that once they've interpreted, or they've actually pretended to be that person, they're going to contact you either by email and try and get your sensitive information so they can use the loss for your password or PIN code. If you ever see anything that is suspicious, the key thing, and you may see this in your test questions, what you would do, immediately delete these emails. So as we point at the bottom, you should delete these emails, especially from an unknown source, because they're purposely, as we pointed out in the little graphical image here, they're phishing for information. So very, very important.